Welcome to I-10 Second Thursday Adventure Cafe. I think I know most of you, but for those of you who I don't know, my name is Melissa Grizzle. I'm the Director of Entrepreneur Development here at I-10. I-10 is a nonprofit that's been around since 2008, focused on helping tech startups from idea stage through to growth and scaling. And we've been doing programming here at Venture Cafe since Venture Cafe started in the fall of 2014 on the second Thursday. So welcome to Second Thursday, and specifically tonight to building a strong B2B sales playbook for your early stage startup. And for tonight's session, we are bringing back an old friend. John Grisman was I-10's original entrepreneur in residence back in 2012, kicked off that program that works with some of our later stage companies, especially as they prepare for our investor readiness program. So he left us to go full time with his startup and exit and do all those great things that serial entrepreneurs do, and has a lot of great experience, especially when it comes to sales, that he's now focused on giving back and sharing with those, with founders that are doing what he's done a number of times. So enough babbling from me. I want to give John the full time here. He's going to speak for a while. We'll definitely have time for Q&A at the end, and before we wrap up about 10 till 5. So John, you want to take it from here?
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay? Yes, all good. Okay. I'm going to step right into my presentation, and I'm going to skip my bio since that was what we just heard about. So the theme or the title of this presentation was building a strong B2B sales playbook for your startup. And like I said, I'm going to skip over this stuff. You guys can look at my LinkedIn profile if you decide to learn more about me. I thought that it might be interesting to go over some myths. In order to deliver this content, I thought it might be fun to bust a couple of myths and reveal some of the information that I've learned over time. Some of these myths you might have heard before. So let's just step through one by one. And I'm going to move this out of my way. There we go. So let's start with myth number one. Tech founders need to be great at sales. The truth is that tech founders need a sales foundation. So you don't need to be great at it, but you need to certainly understand it. Tech founders are typically great product developers and great product visionaries. Rarely have they been professionally trained in sales. Not always, but sometimes they have been. But rarely have you been trained in sales and marketing, nor do founders have experience in modern sales techniques, let alone managing a complex sale. And yet founders are always focused on growing revenue. And I suppose with good reason. Sales are important, right? It impacts fundraising. It impacts your valuation. It impacts how quickly you can scale. It even impacts your ability to pay the bills. So it's likely if you're an early stage startup and you're a founder, you're probably involved in sales, right? Does this mean that you're effective? Maybe. But can you get good at it? The answer is absolutely. You don't have to be an expert. But even if you could be an expert, you shouldn't. Your job is to drive the company, right? But for this narrow period in the life of your startup, you'll own and participate the sales process where it's necessary. And eventually, you're going to hand over the reins to some salesperson or to some director or VP that you hire. And when you do, you'll hand them a playbook that you understand and that you can monitor because you've experienced the process and its evolution. So here's, I've used this set of pillars, these three pillars, to coach and to train founders and their early sales leader. The idea is to help accelerate growth through these three pillars: messaging, sales methodology, and sales skills. The messaging piece right? The idea of having an ideal customer profile developed, developing key personas, those individuals you want to speak with. I'm not going to drill into these for sake of time, but happy to talk about these afterwards. Creating a very clear value proposition and telling a very interesting story in your sales deck is part of messaging. Sales methodology not only involves creating the appropriate go-to-market strategy, but understanding and analyzing the complete customer experience. And along the way, building a process and an associated sales playbook that that provides tools, skills along the way, and content for that journey. And most interestingly, there's data that you use here to that you want to measure and compare and contrast to different points along the journey. And we'll talk more about this later, but that final component is sales skills. The idea of building skills, conversation skills, and techniques for when you're doing prospecting, when you're in a sales conversation, or for when it's time to expand and renew agreements with customers. So this is a basis. Again, you don't have to be an expert, but you definitely have to understand each of these components. And it's rare that you get to do so in one sitting. You have to pick up different books to do that. You have to go to different courses to do that. And so these are the three pillars. Myth number 2. A good sales pitch covers product, the team, and competitors. And I would get a lot of folks arguing with me on this one, but the truth is a good sales pitch tells a story, and that story should create a gap. First of all, story, not your story, the customer's story. I've listened to founders wax on about how great their features are, or what unique IP they have, or how wonderful their team is that they've built, or what glorious backstory they have, or how they best competitors. That's me. No one cares at this point. Features and benefits all distract from where your focus should be, on the customer. So they want to know how you can help them. It's as simple as that. And you want to start there. If you start your sales pitch talking about a laundry list of customer problems, it's just as bad. It further irritates the prospect because it shows that you didn't do your homework and you don't understand their problems. You're throwing spaghetti on a wall. So to accelerate growth and scaling, the way to do that, customers want to be understood, and your current pitch doesn't do much to build your credibility or your perceived value. So how do you do it? Well, discovery, those early questions and conversations that you have that reveal the problems and the challenges and the issues, some that they may not even currently be aware of. Because you're an expert, you can show them. But the idea is discovery happens far in advance of a sales pitch. You want to try and separate a discovery conversation from a pitching conversation, if that's at all possible. And when you do that, what you're doing is you're trying to build a gap between their current state and their desired future state. There's a great book called Gap Selling by Keenan. It's a great read. It's in depth. It's all about sales. With all the time you have, you probably are going to go right out and buy that, I'm sure. But the idea is, and I'll summarize it, if there isn't a gap, you're not going to get a sale. You have to build a big gap that they'll want to do something about, they'll want to take action on. So lastly, I'd say, so then where does all of your talk about your team and your story and your IP and all that, where does that go? Where's a good place for it? Well, first of all, the appendix of your deck is a good place for that, or your website. Hopefully you share all that information on your website because they're going to do homework, just like you've done your homework. You can also include it in your proposal to them. So to tell a story, a lot of people use a framework. And here's an example from another book, Donald Miller's Building a Story Brand. It's called the SB7 Story Brand Framework. So I'll date myself and use Star Wars as an example. The character is Luke. Luke is your customer, the hero, right? The problem, Luke doesn't want to get involved in the rebellion because he works at his uncle's farm. Your customer has a problem. It's your job to understand and uncover their frustrations. Luke meets Obi-Wan, right? A guide. That's you. And Obi-Wan has a plan, just like you'll have a plan. Prospects love and trust guides with a plan. And there's also a call to action, right? Obi-Wan tries to convince Luke that he has to rescue the princess. So you've got to create some motivation here with your prospect through a call to action. Your prospect needs to be challenged to take action, and this is something that's essential. Along that path, you want to avoid failure, right? The Death Star destroys the planet if we don't win here, and the Empire will continue to rule. And show them what success looks like. If you achieve success and destroy the Death Star, the rebellion will live on. So show your prospects how your product can positively influence their lives. Every sales deck should have some flavor of a framework like this. And this is just one example. Myth number 3, prospects understand what you do. One of my faves. The truth is, many founders struggle to effectively communicate what their company does. I like to use the 10-second rule. If I can't understand what you do in 10 seconds, that's too long. You gotta take your rocket science, and everybody likely has some flavor of rocket science, and explain it, simplify it so that a kid gets it. And we all founders, and I've shared this, I've been in your shoes, we have the curse of knowledge, right? We feel the need to share all of these details, but we need to understand our audience. We love to talk about our product, but often it's too much. And the message is lost because you're not considering the audience. You may have seen recently in the last couple of months, did anybody see the SpaceX launch, rocket launch, right? They've developed some pretty cool new tech. And before the launch, they explained a lot of it. And you know, this idea of protecting the astronauts from an explosion was a big deal, right? Sending astronauts into space for the first time in a long time was a big deal. So they used, and I don't know if you can see it on this slide, they used some very simple language to explain it so that everybody got it. We saved the crew by separating them from the rocket, like an ejection seat on a fighter jet. Anybody can comprehend that. They didn't use technical language. They could have, but they didn't. And with this new technology, the reusable rockets, they said this: we'll use the same rockets again and again with regular flights into space, just like airplanes. Taking your rocket science and making it simple, so simple you can explain it in 10 seconds so that a kid gets it. Let's also talk about something else here. Let's put yourself in front of an investor. And likely your first pitch with an investor is be with an analyst or a researcher, someone lower level, probably not a partner, right? Those people review 50 to 100 deals a week. Do you think they're going to remember you in a week with a really long technical drill down explanation, right? So there are ways to do this, and I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Here's one, and I'm picking on somebody right now. Nobody on this phone, and no one around here, but they've corrected themselves since. But the idea, I'm going to read this off to you. You could see if you can understand what the product is. Company is a real-time human physiological health, wellness, and performance data platform. They offer accurate, real-time, deep insights into physiology, captured non-invasively during work, rest, and play. Can anybody, I will buy an adult beverage to someone who can tell me what this might be. And would you be surprised to know that This is a mouth guard, a specialized mouth guard. Now, they've come a long way since then, and wouldn't it be easier if they described it like this? A custom fit mouth guard sensor to improve player performance and reduce risk of injury. See the difference between the two. Here's another example. If you've ever used Wi-Fi extender products in your home to improve the home wireless, Eero is a company that provides this. Here's a template for how they created not only a description or a value proposition, but also position themselves against the competition. So for tech-forward households who have who have dead zones or buffering, Eero is the world's first home Wi-Fi system that blankets your home in fast, reliable Wi-Fi. Just think about the language that they used there. So not only was it clear and simple, but it was very creative. You could even feel that the term blanket your home. There was work done to choose those specific words to create an image. And then they go on to explain how they position themselves against the competition. Unlike a single ugly Netgear, Belkin, or Linksys router, Eero uses multiple devices working in unison to create a wireless mesh network. Myth number 4. How are we doing on time? Are we good? Cool. Myth number 4, a great product sells itself. The truth is that sales are engineered. This is especially true in the larger complex sale where there's many decision makers and long sales cycles. It might be true in direct to consumer or small medium business, but certainly true in the complex sale. Early sales typically are, and you as founders may have experienced this, a happy accident of fit or a personal connection. But like great products, sales are engineered and they require a plan and an intelligent set of interactions between your prospect and your team. And you follow a process, and in order to win, you can, follow, if a process is followed, you can do that again and again. This is especially true in the SaaS space, where customers make a conscious decision monthly or quarterly or annually to stay committed to you and to renew. And you need to earn that business, and your people are required to be great across that entire set of touch points in the customer journey. So let's take a look at how we might apply science to sales. So this is a high-level overview of some of the science associated with it. And we're also looking at it through the eyes of the customer. So typically you see a sales pipeline that goes from top to bottom. This sales pipeline or journey goes from left to right. Okay, and these are different touch points along the customer journey. On the left side of the screen is what happens before a sale occurs. On the right side is what happens after a sale occurs. Okay, and this information, by the way, this is nothing that I've created. Again, this comes from Gartner CEB and a combination also of the folks at Winning by Design. They're sales consultants, good group. So the idea is the customer will experience each stage via moments that you engage with them. And there are metrics at each stage. You're going to measure those, you're going to analyze those, and you're going to compare those to industry standards to see how you're doing. And in the process, you will build a process that fits for your customer size. You're going to document it, and it's going to be pretty simple in the early days. Over time, it's going to get more complex, but it should be simple in the early days. And from that, you'll create a playbook. And that playbook will include stages and content necessary to move prospects forward. It'll include skills that are required to move through that stage and advance the opportunity. And then finally, a set of technical tools, technology to assist along the way. And then maybe even some exit criteria to move to kind of check off the ability to move to the next stage. But it's important to get the left side correct, because you really kind of only get one shot at a customer, especially a large account. And then the right side, everybody cares about that first sale, but in the SaaS world, 75 to 98% of the lifetime revenue generated by a customer occurs after the first sale. So it's important that you get it right, and that you get it right again and again and again. So this is the big picture. This will help you build your strategy for how to scale, and hopefully it's done right at the beginning of your building your sales capacity. Lastly, myth number 5, enterprise sales suck right now. And my myth busting statement is, our new environment is an opportunity. And what I mean by that is, it's an opportunity to increase your productivity, to take advantage of what I would call remote selling, and give you the ability to accelerate portions of your sales cycle through some tactics. And I'll share a couple of these with you. So current state of enterprises, right? COVID-19 has impacted enterprise sales. In some cases, in a really bad way, right? Things have just screeched to a halt. In other cases, it's impacted on the positive side. So they have a completely different problem. Meetings have been canceled. There's no longer face-to-face meetings allowed, or maybe they're starting to be allowed a little bit. But in general, high activity performed by salespeople with fewer conversions that were occurring than in the pre-COVID world. So, it would be common to ask, so how would I sell in this environment? So there is an opportunity to increase your productivity. So let's say, for sake of our argument, that there has been a drop in productivity and a drop in the activities. The idea, once there has been a significant drop, is to try and bounce back from that drop. Everyone's trying to do the same thing. So your job as a competitor in a particular prospect opportunity is to bounce back and be more efficient than your competition as you do this. So now you're going to get some pushback on this from traditional enterprise sellers, going from being on site where you're able to see everybody, interact with everybody, and handshake and be socialized with them. There's no replacement for that. I will absolutely admit there's no replacement for it. It's not the same as remote, but you can get close, and you can, if you're focused, you can bounce back quicker. So this is a particular challenge for existing enterprise sellers, but there are tools out there. And let's walk through maybe a couple examples of what's happening out there in the world, what I'm seeing. So before we do that, let's talk through the go-to-market approach. I want to make sure that we're clear on this. So first of all, I'm talking about large accounts, complex sales where there's high annual contract values. There's a low number of deals that occur on a yearly basis. There are many decision makers, 5, 7, often 10 individuals that are part of the decision-making process. And the sales cycle's long, months or quarters, or maybe even more than a year are the kind of selling that I'm talking about. That's the go-to-market strategy I'm talking about here. And there have been traditional approaches. And I'm sure you're familiar with most of these, right? Mostly in person with some remote. That's a traditional approach. And that was, somebody's on site, they have a badge, the meetings are face-to-face, they literally book a full day on campus because they're going to go from one meeting with one person to another. There are meals, there are dinners, there's socializing, there's activities that occur outside of normal working hours. That's the traditional approach, in person. Then there's the mostly remote with some in person. That's a lot, actually, that has been happening over, not today, but over the past 5 years or so, more remote selling. And then there's the inside sales approach, right? Where you have salespeople sitting in a building in a central location, and they meet clients rarely. If they do, it's maybe at industry events, right? So those are traditional approaches. Then we have the current approach. All meetings are performed remotely, or what I call synchronously. Synchronously means, right, you've agreed to meet at the same place at the same time, and typically on a call like we're doing right now, like Zoom, right? And that current playbook, whatever you had, is just simply being executed remotely. So now there's that current approach, and there's also one that's emerging now. And what I mean by that is to combine remote selling, which I described above, with asynchronous meetings. Remember, a synchronous meeting is meeting at the same place at the same time. But imagine if you could reduce your sales cycle by not having a meeting and having a meetingless meeting. Couldn't that accelerate your deal? And what I mean by that, I'll give you an example. I'll use the example of a proposal. Okay. When typically in larger organizations, you want to submit a proposal. Normally, people just email it, and that's very common. And my first advice is never just email it. It's better to schedule a call and walk them through it. That way, if there's any questions, you can address them immediately and make sure that they understand the proposal. Now, this asynchronous proposal concept is a little bit different. You've got your proposal, and what you'll do once you're done with your proposal is you'll record a video, maybe 5 minutes, and literally just turn your video camera on and do a split screen. On the left side of the screen is you, and on the right side of the screen is your proposal. And literally walk them through this proposal, send it over to them as a draft, and you're sending it to your champion, the champion inside of that organization, and that individual will share it internally immediately. Now, you want to do that, and there are some advantages to do that. First of all, you're going to help your champion build momentum faster. Your champion is the one that's on your side, that wants to see you win, all right? It speeds up the proposal submission process because when you share this with them, you're going to do something interesting. When you share it with them, you're going to share it initially with the champion, and you're going to share it as a doc, either a Microsoft doc or a Google doc, all right? Share it so that they can comment internally. Give your champion edit rights, and then others have comment rights. And then what you'll do as you start to see who looks at the document and who comments, you'll create an additional section, a Q&A section that will be a compilation of all the questions and comments inside of that document. Now, that will absolutely speed up the process because you're going to also get exposure to their decision process. You've personalized the proposal and you've added relevance because you've explained it in summary fashion. It speeds up that back and forth process. You would have had to schedule a meeting, and that meeting you've had to dance back and forth on when everybody could meet, right? And it increases the quality of your delivery, you being an expert voice. That's just one example of how to add asynchronous meetings to your sales cycle to remove meeting time and planning associated with a sales cycle. Here's another one. So prospecting is a big deal. So how do you accelerate demand? So I am a huge fan of LinkedIn. It is the 5th largest site on the web today. And it is likely that prospects or targets are likely there. Unless you're only selling to physicians or you're selling to construction people, they're probably not going to be there, but there's 650 million people on LinkedIn. You want to take advantage of that. And the best way to connect is to connect with them with a LinkedIn account. Now, what kind of account? So there's a base account. I would suggest upgrading to a premium account. I think it's maybe $50 a month. Or if you're inclined, LinkedIn Sales Navigator is a little more expensive, but the filtering and search capabilities are awesome. But the idea is you probably have a company page and you have a personal page. You want to use your individual profile to communicate with these people. You go out and look at any major brands posts on their company site. There's so much less engagement because people like engaging with people. LinkedIn is a brand building platform, and you have to build, as the founder, you have to build your brand. Your brand then becomes super important to what you're doing as an organization. And so let's talk about your profile. You need to make sure that you're aligned with your customer. So when you're viewed, people see your picture, they see your name, and then there's a sentence after your name, right? That first sentence after your name should explain how you help your primary prospect. And it's really simple. I help X with Y. X equals your customer type or description, and then Y is how you help them and how you uniquely help them. But you want to fit that into that sentence after your name. Now, LinkedIn gives you the ability, let me do a time check here. Okay, we're okay. LinkedIn gives the ability to make connections, and you could send emails or LinkedIn emails all you want. I'm not telling you to do that though. You want to connect with those who are your ideal prospects. You want to connect with 25 to 50 of them a day. Just like you wake up and brush your teeth every morning, go make 25 to 50 new connections to prospects that are out there. And the way you do that, you use the filtering capabilities of LinkedIn, and you do a filter on industry or by title. And there's no email required here. Just click on connect. Okay. Analysis data has shown that if you just click on that connect button, it's just as effective at getting them to accept as if you sent them a customized email or even a templated email message. So don't waste your time. Just click connect. Okay. You also want to engage with your prospect. So whether they accept or not, you could still engage with them. If they haven't accepted, that doesn't mean you can't engage with them. They'll have posts, right? They have a brand they're building. They have posts, or they like something, or they share something. You want to go in, look into their posts, because you can do that. You want to like their posts. You want to comment on their posts. You want to tag others in interesting posts. You want to share their posts. That helps them. And if you do that enough, guess what? You're getting noticed in their feed, and you become a familiar name. And they see, I help X with Y. Pretty soon, if they haven't already, they're going to accept your request to connect. And then maybe someday you start a conversation, right? And the last thing is, you want to start to create content. You're an expert in your field. So you can write a post, a written post. You can do a video. You can publish a document, slides, images, graphics, whatever. But the idea is that your content becomes your outbound. It becomes your demand generation. When you post, it shows up in their feed. You become more familiar, and it's more likely to start a conversation. Some kind of key insider tips. You want to be consistent. The LinkedIn algorithm loves consistency. So if you're going to publish something 3 times a day, go for it. Just be consistent. If you want to do it once a week, be consistent. 3 times a week, be consistent. The point is be consistent. You might think that the LinkedIn algorithm, when you click on post, that information, that it goes out to all of your contacts or connections, and that's not true. It only shares your post with a very small percentage of your connections. It's basically a trial to see if people like it or if they'll comment on it. And once, so, and what they'll do is that algorithm will examine it. It's very important. The first couple hours are very important. So during those first couple hours, it's going to say, oh, this is some interesting material. I'm going to, because people like it and are sharing it and are commenting on it, I'm going to share it out with more. And then the more it's liked, I'm going to share it out more. That's how the algorithm is working today. And those first couple hours are critical. Most importantly, if you are desirous of creating content, do not sell. Do not sell. You are educating and you are providing value. So when it's time, they'll think of you because you made an impression as a subject matter expert without ever having to sell or talk about your product offering. This tactic will keep a healthy pipeline of ops. And you also have to keep in mind this box on the right, that only 3% of those that you talk to are ready to buy today. The other 97% aren't ready to buy. And so your content can be the way you maintain conversations with them until the time's ready.